Right, and also to navigate the governmental system, because in China you have to get permission from the government to put your meeting on there, and then you have to go through a local organization to even ask the government. And sometimes a PCO can help you with the legal issues that you're looking at in another country.
What about VAT, value-added tax recovery, or not? You can mitigate expenses by recovering VAT,
right,
but it's not as easy as it sounds. Talk about navigating that.
VAT is value-added tax, and it can range anywhere from, I think, 18% is the lowest in Europe.
25.
Up to 25% in Scandinavian countries. And for us, this is a pitfall, but for us it seems like the VAT laws change just before we go in to do our annual meeting in Europe. And or they change to your benefit, but only after our event is over. So, so we've had, anyway. So a lot of times we don't, on smaller meetings, like a workshop for 150 people, we don't even bother to try to get the VAT back. We just budget for it. But for the annual meeting, you can imagine with facility rental, anywhere from $600 to $1 million or even more, VAT is significant. So for example, this last year in Stockholm, our VAT was in the neighborhood of $400,000. In Berlin in 2007, our VAT was $375,000.
So let's just say you want that money back.
I want that money back. I mean, I don't want to budget for that because it won't let me raise the registration rates to try to cover it. So you have a choice. You can try to navigate that system yourself, which is a big mistake if you do, because sometimes in some countries you have one chance and one chance only. And if they say no to you, you can't appeal it. You just lose it. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is one of your most important strategic partners when you're doing a large meeting outside of North America is your VAT company.
So you heard it here.
Right.
And there's a bunch of them. They're easy to find. Make sure they're good.
If you have, I'll give you my card. Call me, because we've had experience with several. And they usually are worldwide. They usually have offices worldwide. They know what they're doing. And what you do is you budget what their take is. So out of that $400,000 in Stockholm that we paid, we budgeted about $75,000
for their fee.
For their fee, because they charge generally around anywhere from 17 to 20% of the recovered amount. And I know it sounds like a huge chunk,
but you couldn't do it yourself.
You can't do it yourself. You just can't. And plus, they're available during the site selection process too. We have such a good relationship with our VAT company that when we're evaluating whether to go into another different part of the world, they're one of the first people we call. What is the tax situation? Are we going to eat the tax? Like in Japan, they have a 5% consumption tax. You don't get it back. But 5% is a lot easier to handle than 17 to 25%.
How about managing currency fluctuations, transferring of funds, depositing funds in local currency in country? How do you manage that process? You're talking about, for an annual meeting, Roberta's annual meetings are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people, right? You're talking about significant dollars or yen or euros or whatever it is. How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, we take, when we're not on site, we take all in US dollars.
But not bags of. You're
right.
Talking about credit cards, and you open bank accounts in country?
We try to open bank accounts. You can't always open bank, and it's gotten a lot harder after 9/11 to open up bank accounts in other countries, unless you use PCO, which we haven't used. And so in 2007, when we were in Berlin, we just kind of found this little window, and we opened up an account with the Deutsche Bank. And we told them to close it after the meeting was over. And then about 2 years ago, we were trying to figure out a way to save on some bank charges and buying currency to subsidize our speakers or to send student stipend checks out to save some money. checked and they hadn't closed the account. And it had like
10
the
euros.
equivalent of 50 cents in it. So we opened it, and it's one of the greatest things that we've done. We've saved probably $20,000 a year. I mean, it's not an insignificant budget.
Real money.
Real money. And what we do is we buy currency, euros, when it's to our benefit, and we keep probably somewhere between $200,000–300,000 worth of euros in this account, and we pay expenses for workshops when we're in Europe.
So are you analyzing
speakers.
currency fluctuations
We do.
and making a decision to buy?
Well, and we have a
spend?
number of tools. There's tools online that will take it out over 12 months, and you can analyze it there. Our bank advises us when it's time to buy euros. We also, I just have a great director of finance, who's very international herself, and in her ethnicity, and she is on top of it at all times.
Great.
So you do, and then you buy forwarding contracts. You know, there's different things that you can do to soften it.
Forwarding contracts, it's interesting. Why don't you just quickly, to close up, define what a currency forward contract is, because this is a very interesting best practice.
I am not the person to explain that.
I can do it.
But you explain.
So forwarding contract means that you agree to buy X amount of currency at a future date and put down that money and agree that 6 months or a year or whatever from now, you will buy €1,000,000 worth of currency on that date, and it will get locked in today. So you're betting. You're betting that it's either going to stay the same or go up and not go down in value. So you're basically saying, I'm going to be able to budget today, for the example, €1,000,000, and it's going to cost me $1.25 million, let's just hypothetically say, and you're betting that at that point in time, that currency fluctuation will not change. So it allows you to say, at a moment in time today, this is how much I would spend. You can lose on it just as easily as you can be favorable.
So what we end up doing is that we always tend to pad our budget a bit to allow for currency fluctuations, especially with our annual meeting when we're outside. When we're outside North America, because it's such a big budget item, because our annual meeting can go up to almost $4 million when we're outside of North America, is we budget in a certain padding to allow for currency fluctuations so that we're not looking at huge budget variations when we report to the board after the meeting is over and we're at the end of our fiscal year.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank the panel for giving us not just pitfalls, but also best practices that hopefully you can walk away with. We've heard face-to-face meetings are not going away. We've heard that buyer relationships in terms of contracting and being transparent is really key. We've heard best practices around global meetings, and I urge you to use what Roberta has said, networking, to use the panel and your colleagues within PCMA when you're dealing with contracting, virtual, global. You've got experts here, you've got experts in the room and within the chapter and within PCMA. This is really part of our professional home that you can use to answer questions, get best practices, and we urge you to utilize that. We want to thank everybody for being at our show today. And yeah, you want to take some questions?
I'll take a couple questions.
Sure.
A lot of people had
Questions from the audience. Anybody, be brave. We'll ask you questions if you don't ask us questions.
Well, I'll kick it off.
Fire away.
Because I just have some questions in there. First of all, thanks for the overview. I think it was nice to see the different components and strengths. It reminds me that maybe we need some workshop follow-up, particularly with international. That was eye-opening for me. And I think one thing, so what would you say in terms of international meetings? I mean, do we know, like, you mentioned some of the pitfalls, but when did you start to realize that you needed to do this internationally? Has it always been something that's been part of the culture?
Well, for our organization, it's just been part of the culture from day one. It was established in 1982. They've always, it's just, what's changed is where we go. So it used to be we just did New York, San Francisco, Europe, New York, San Francisco, Europe. And as the organization grew, they felt that we needed to add Asia and the Pan-Pacific because it better reflected how our membership had developed. And so now we added that fourth year, but we've been international from the very beginning.
And by nature of your association, the International Society of, it was part and parcel.
Right.
How about for Cisco and for your clients, this whole international, you started as a U.S. company, you've become a global company. What's been the shift for you, just speaking on behalf of Cisco generally, from going global?
From a meetings perspective, I have to say that, you know, the way we're structured is, you know, here in the States, I only manage meetings for the U.S. and Canada. And then we have an office set up in Europe that handles all of Europe. We have our office set up in Singapore that handles all of our Asian market. And then we have in India, which is a big hub for Cisco, in Bangalore. So, and they handle all of and manage all the emerging markets.
And hopefully you guys talk or get together.
And we talk all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And so we don't get involved in, you know, not understanding the different denominations or cash denominations, because our experts in those certain areas, they deal with it for us.
We're just saying,
yeah, it's interesting how you're an expert now. I've kind of become an expert in all of those areas for international meetings. But we do plan international meetings.
You're off to Barcelona with a meeting soon, right?
Yes, yes.